In a nutshell, what is trauma? What is your interpretation of what trauma actually is?
Well, that's a really good question. And, I think that trauma is something which is very, the first thing that comes to mind when I think of trauma is the fact that it's inconspicuous. It's nothing that you can see with your own eyes. It's not something which is a physical cut like you get on your arm. It's not something which is which you can actually see, and you can see the effects of it. There's one time I did a post on Breaking Barriers where I said, mental health it's kind of like the wind. You can't see the wind, but you can feel it. As in England, it's basically the wind can be piercingly cold and it can be so harsh on your skin. It's the same with mental illness and trauma. So even though you can't see it, it's basically like under the surface bubbling up. And trauma, I think, is something which is so fundamentally important to kind of grasp what we really understand trauma is. Because for me, I think trauma is it's like the imprint of a past set of memories. It's basically like a black lingering cloud, which kind of doesn't seem to go away. It's this ever persistent black cloud which is always over your head, and it seems to kind of, there might be days where it's a little bit more gray, maybe a little white, maybe you get a few days off, but then nonetheless it just comes back. And as we know from Bessel van der Kolk's book, The Body Keeps the Score, we know from a neurological point of view that there's a physical impact on the brain. There's a physical imprint. There's changes to one's nervous system when we experience trauma, and there's another thing I think about trauma, which is the fact that we say the word trauma as if it's static, right? As if it's trauma. It's a stationary word. It's a sedentary term. Whereas sometimes the English language can be so constricting. I think that trauma, you could even call it trauma in, because it's something we go through. It's persistent. It keeps going. It doesn't stop. So I think we're all going through this sense of trauma in because it's lingering and it's always around us. And for me, trauma is just something which just kind of sneaks up on you and always kind of comes back to you. You might be going through life and you might be thinking things are okay, and then kind of feels like you're getting a tap on the back of a shoulder, and it's kind of like, hey buddy, it's me, it's trauma, I'm back. And you're like, oh shit, and it's something you kind of have to really learn to live with. And if there's one thing I know about trauma, is that the more that you kind of have an aversion to it, the more that you kind of feel like you're apprehensive about it, the more it will control your life. So that's why, for me in particular, I feel like it's been such a massive journey of healing, of recovery, and that's why we call it heal in. As it's pluralized. We're heal in. There's never a healed. So you've got, on one hand, you've got trauma in, and then on the other hand, you've got heal in. They're both synonymous. They both go together at the same time. They're two different sides of the same coin, two different wings of the same bird. And I just think that it's so important to find that counterbalance of knowing that, yes, this is something that I've become succumbed to. This is something I feel a bit subdued in, but it doesn't mean that that's even though you might feel you're in a rough ocean of trauma, it doesn't mean you have to drown in it, because there is ways, mechanisms, strategies that we can do to really, snap us into the present moment, to kind of really overcome that. And I think I can really I can really testify to the fact that healing is possible. I'm not coming from the standpoint that I am healed, but it's healing. Like, healing is possible. It's more than possible, and that's why I'm so keen to be here and to share my story, so I can help your viewers with maybe a bit of strategies that I can offer to them.